Learning Chinese is a great investment for your future in Hong Kong. Although people in Hong Kong speak Cantonese language, learn Mandarin in Hong Kong has become more and more popular. Why? China has a population of approximately 1.4 billion, and there are 50 million Chinese speaking Chinese overseas, including Singapore, as well as overseas Chinese and overseas students in various countries. Unlike local languages such as Russian, Arabic, Japanese, and Hindi, the Chinese spread Chinese with greater speed and strength. There must be Chinatown in major cities in the United States and Europe. In Chinatown, Chinese can be spoken unimpeded. Population is a factor, and Chinese has become the second most important language, which is closely related to China's growing economic strength. Now China's economic aggregate is second only to the United States. There are more and more foreigners learning Chinese in the world. For nothing else, taking Mandarin class in Hong Kong can make money. Good for your future career. The Chinese economy has developed so fast in the past 40 years, and it has now become the world's largest economy. For those interested in working in China, there are countless career opportunities, and more have been creating. Proficiency in Chinese allows you to be a few steps ahead of other employees. For people who want to work in China or work with Chinese customers, speaking Chinese is usually a requirement. Hong Kong is a place where to connect Chinese, therefore, if you learn Mandarin in Hong Kong, you are benefited directly. In addition, international companies are more willing to hire people who speak more than one language. Speaking Chinese may give you an advantage when competing for important positions, because China will play an important role in future world affairs. Don't forget that China is a great country to teach English while developing your language and cultural skills. Teaching English in China is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. It benefits you personally and professionally in countless ways, from acquiring public speaking skills to becoming familiar with the world's second-largest economy. Good for making money. As mentioned above, the Chinese community with a population of 1.4 billion is the most promising market in the 21st century. Second, countries in the world, especially Western industrialized countries, are currently facing many difficulties. People may find solutions to the problems of globalization, such as global warming, energy crisis, etc., that have accumulated thousands of years of wisdom and experience from the ancient Chinese culture. The West has also entered a dead end. After the Industrial Revolution made mass production mainstream, they found that they could not solve many of the derived problems. Chen Lihang, the president of the world-renowned ceramic boutique industry, Farland Ceramics, analyzed sharply. So they began to want to find the answer from an ancient civilization. It must be a nation that has lived for a long time to have the answer, and it must be an ancient country that has grown. With a history of 5,000 years, the Chinese nation, which has established the glorious and prosperous ages of the Han and Tang dynasties, has been immersed in Confucianism, Buddhism, and Taoism for a long time. At this moment, when material science and technology civilization is highly developed but also highly polluted, it has become a solution for human beings. Explore the treasure house. Good for your health. Learning a foreign language has many advantages, one of which is that it can help us reduce the risk of Alzheimer's disease. Scientific research has found that learning a second language can improve the cognitive function of the brain, improve the health of the brain, increase the sensitivity of the brain, enhance the executive function of the brain, and make the brain more flexible. Being bilingual seems to have a protective effect on cognitive impairment after stroke and is associated with a good prognosis for patients. This topic is very interesting, but it is not clear whether this protective effect is related to bilingualism or literacy. Researchers found that being bilingual had a protective effect on cognitive impairment after stroke and was independent of the education level, but they failed to correct the subject's literacy. Almost all bilingual speakers have good literacy skills. In contrast, only about 60% of monolingual speakers have good literacy skills. It is well known that patients who actively participate in cognitive stimulation activities after stroke have a better cognitive prognosis. Those with good literacy skills may be more likely to participate in cognitive stimulation activities after a stroke. Good for your brain. A number of studies have demonstrated the cognitive advantages of language learning. There may not be a better way to get these benefits than learning Chinese. This language may be very different from the language you have learned before. Imagine communicating in a language that does not use conjugates and plurals, while using a written form that contains deep meanings derived from logos. It's amazing. Learning language is a good exercise for the brain, because when people are learning new words and grammar, many parts of the brain are working at the same time. For children, learning to speak a second foreign language can help them with better hearing, stronger memory, and more creative, stronger ability to solve complex problems, and better cognitive flexibility and the ability to think. Learning Chinese is especially good for children. Children's brains are plastic. They can use the left and right hemispheres at the same time when needed for language development, so it is easier for children to learn languages. In most adults, the development of language function is usually biased towards the left hemisphere, so adults will choose to use logic to analyze memory when they encounter problems in learning language. So if you learn a foreign language in your childhood, it will be easier for you to grasp the social and emotional context related to the language. When learning a second language as an adult, when encountering learning difficulties, people will show fewer emotional barriers and use more rational ways to solve problems. Good for you to understand the world. I think learning Chinese can open the door to a new world. Nowadays, more and more people in the world are learning Chinese, and the purposes of learning Chinese are also diverse. Some are used for work or business, because Chinese is a valuable resource in today's business world. Some are for learning, especially for studying in China, because China's education system and quality are among the best in the world. Some are for research, while others are just for interest. But one thing is very common, that is, they want to learn about China and get closer to China. China has a large population. There are about 1.2 billion people in total, including native and second language speakers. About 1 billion of them can speak Mandarin. I have always wanted to study in China because I am a ceramics student. China is known as the hometown of ceramic art. But I think that not only ceramics but also language, history, customs and culture also make people interested. Therefore, learning Chinese will help me experience the rich diversity of traditional and modern Chinese culture. Is it worth learning Chinese? Yes. To illustrate this fact, an insightful Forbes article celebrated the global push to learn new languages, especially the recent upsurge of students learning Mandarin. But the writer Nick Morrison also discussed our motives. He questioned the way the West develops language movements. What makes you eager to learn Chinese? How can we promote language learning to others? The common answer to these questions is usually, learning Chinese opens the door to employment opportunities. Although this is certainly true, Morrison urges us to think beyond the surface. The value of learning a new language goes far beyond increasing your job prospects or getting a promotion at work. Learning languages is for life, Morrison said, not just for business.